First years of a long war, 1861 to 1862. People at first expected the war to last no more than a few weeks. Lincoln called up the first volunteers for an enlistment period of only 90 days. On to Richmond was the optimistic cry, but as Americans soon learned it would take almost 4 years of ferocious fighting before Union troops finally did march into the Confederate capital. First Battle of Bull Run. In the first major battle of the war, July 1861, 30,000 Federal troops marched from Washington, D.C. to attack Confederate forces positioned near Bull Run Creek in Manassas Junction, Virginia. Just as the Union forces seemed to be close to victory, Confederate reinforcements under General Thomas Stonewall Jackson counteracted and sent the inexperienced Union troops in disorderly and panicky flight back to Washington, together with civilian curiosity seekers and panickers. The battle ended the illusion of a short war and promoted the myth that rebels were invincible in battle. Union strategy. General-in-Chief Winfield Scott, veteran of 1812 and Mexican Wars, devised a three-part strategy for winning a long war. Use the U.S. Navy to blockade southern ports, called the Anaconda Plan, cutting off essential supplies from reaching the Confederacy, take control of Mississippi River, dividing the Confederacy in two, raise and train an army 500,000 to conquer Richmond. The first two parts of the strategy proved easier to achieve than the third, but ultimately all three were important in achieving Northern victory. After Union's defeat at Bull Run, Federal armies experienced a succession of crushing defeats as they attempted various campaigns in Virginia, each way less successful than the one before. Peninsula Campaign. General George B. McClellan, a new commander of the Union Army in the East, insisted that his troops be given a long period of training before going into the battle. Finally, after many delays that sorely tested Lincoln's patience, McClellan's army invaded Virginia in March 1862. The Union Army was stopped as a result of brilliant tactical moves by the Confederate General Robert E. Lee, who emerged as the commander of the South's eastern forces. After 5 months, McClellan was forced to retreat and ordered back to Potomac, where he was replaced by General John Pope. Second Battle of Bull Run. Lee took advantage of the change in Union generals to strike quickly at Pope's army in northern Virginia. He drew Pope into a trap, then struck the enemy's flank and sent the Union army backwards into Bull Run. Pope withdrew at the defenses of Washington. Antietam. Following up his victory at Bull Run, Lee led his army across the Potomac into enemy territory in Maryland. In doing so, he hoped on major Confederate victory in a Union state would convince Britain to give official recognition and support to the Confederacy. By this time, September 1862, Lincoln had restored McClellan to command of the Union Army. McClellan had the advantage of knowing Lee's battle plan because a copy of it had been dropped accidentally by a Confederate officer. The Union Army intercepted the invading Confederates at Antietam Creek in the Maryland town of Sharpsburg. Here, the bloodiest single day in combat in the entire war took place, in the day in which more than 22,000 soldiers were killed or wounded. Unable to break through the Union's lines, Lee's army retreated to Virginia. Disappointed with McClellan for failing to pursue Lee's weakened retreating army, Lincoln removed him for a final time as the Union commander. The president complained that his general had a bad case of the slows while a draw on the battlefield. Antietam proved to be a decisive battle because the Confederates failed to get what they so urgently needed: open recognition and aid from a foreign power. On the other side, Lincoln found enough encouragement in the results of Antietam to claim a Union victory. As explained later in this chapter, Lincoln used the partial triumph of the Union arms to announce plans for direct assault on the institution of slavery. Fredericksburg. Replacing McClellan with the more aggressive General Ambrose Burnside, Lincoln discovered that a strategy of reckless attack could have even worse consequences than McClellan's strategy of caution and action. In December 1862, a large Union army under Burnside attacked Lee's army at Fredericksburg, Virginia, and suffered immense losses. 12,000 dead or wounded compared to the 5,000 Confederate casualties. Both Union and Confederate generals were slow to learn and improved weaponry, especially against the deadly fire of the enemy artillery, took the romance out of heroic charges against the enriched positions. By the end of 1862, the awful magnitude of war was all too clear, with no prospect of military victory for either side. The Second War of 1862 was a disastrous one for the Union, except for the two engagements, one at sea and the other at the rivers of West. Monitor v. Merrimack. The Union's hopes for winning the war depended upon its ability to maximize its economic and naval disadvantages by an effective blockade of Confederate ports, the Anaconda Plain. During McClellan's Peninsula Campaign, the Union's blockade strategy was placed in jeopardy by Confederate ironclad ship the Merrimack, a former Union ship rebuilt named the Virginia, that attacked and sunk several Union wooden ships on March 8, 1862, near Hampton Roads, Virginia. The ironclad ship seemed unstoppable. However, on March 9th, the Union's own ironclad, the Monitor, engaged the Merrimack in a 5-hour duel. Although the battle ended in a draw, the Monitor prevented the Confederates' formidable new weapon from challenging the U.S. naval blockade. More broadly, the Monitor and the Merrimack marked a turning point in naval warfare, with vulnerable wooden ships being replaced by far more formidable ironclad ones. Grant in the West. The Battle of Ironclads occurred at about the same time as far bloodier encountered in the western Tennessee Confederate state. The Union's campaigns for control of the Mississippi River was partly under the command of West Point graduate Ulysses S. Grant, who had joined for the war after an unsuccessful civilian career. Striking south from Illinois in the early 1862, Grant used a combination of gunboats, army maneuvers to capture Fort Henry and Fort Donelson in the Cumberland River, a branch of the Mississippi. These stunning victories, in which 14,000 Confederates were taken prisoner, opened up the states of Mississippi to the Union attack. A few weeks later, a Confederate army under Albert Johnson surprised Grant at Shiloh, Tennessee, but the Union army held its ground and finally forced the Confederates to retreat after terrible losses on both sides, more than 23,000 dead and wounded. Grant's drive down the Mississippi was complemented in April 1862 by the capture of New Orleans and Union Navy under David Farragut. Foreign affairs and diplomacy will